You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to look into horror films, dissecting them one screen legend at a time. Our focus for this upcoming season, or this current season, is to look at the Friday the 13th franchise. And the idea is that we look at this particular franchise and the impact that it's had on the horror film scene. In order to successfully do this, I do need a team of horror aficionados who form the surgical team each episode. First up, there's yours truly, Paul Farrell, lead surgeon and host for the series of the podcast. Joining me each episode, particularly at the operating theatre and talking around the Friday the 13th franchise, is Miles Davies. Thank you, Miles, for joining me.
Hello.
It's good to have you aboard again, buddy. So this, we're now coming into the third instalment. So this Friday the 13th, Part 3D.
Yeah, 3D. I love it. I almost felt like I should have had my green and red glasses on. I remember when this came out, and the 3D. It actually looks alright though. I wish I could have seen it in 3D.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, there was pockets in it where I was watching it. I was just like, actually, that would have been quite cool to see that, in a 3D environment rather than mock 3D when you're watching it on your TV screen. But yeah, we'll come to the whole 3D kind of component of it. So look, this is the third instalment. We have Steve Miner coming back to direct it for what would be his second outing at the in the director's chair. But let's as is usual, we'll start talking about the plot line, and we'll drift here and there as we go through it. And for those listeners that are new to this, the idea is that we get together, we talk about a particular film, and the first instance is that I almost kind of talk about the narrative or plot line of the film. Before then, we start getting into the guts of the subject by talking about the players of the piece. Maybe a few notes around the director's commentary or angle that they may have been going for in the particular movie, and then we round things up with our final verdict. So let's talk about the movie. We open up on with the music and credits. We a bit similar to the second installment. We get like the closing moments of the previous movie. So we have Jenny coming back to the shack. Finding the dead bodies and the dismembered head of Mrs. Voorhees. And then we see her again putting on the jumper and pretending to be Mrs. Voorhees. And that's when Jason breaks in. He falls for the ruse until he sees his mother's head. Then Paul arrives, a struggle ensues. Jenny grabs the machete, swings it down on him, and Jason collapses. Paul and Jenny leave the shack, and then Jason rises once more. And we close on Mrs. Voorhees' head. Then, interestingly, we then have the proper open credits with some funky music.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to really get down.
Yeah,
it's like proper 1980s disco dance.
Disco music. And I listened to the commentary on this, and Harry Mancini is there. He did the original score. But he talks about how this apparently was an actual hit at the time too.
Oh, no way!
Seriously, that's what he said. And I'm listening to it, going, "This is terrible." It
was awful. It was so inappropriate. The music.
I know.
I just went, "Oh, you're shitting me."
I'm immediately like.
But then there's a flashy title zooming at the screen.
Yeah, that's right.
Sort of Superman as well. So.
Yeah, which is supposed to jump out of the screen in 3D mode. Yeah. Anyway, it really jarred too. It just shook you out of the movie. Anyway, once you get beyond that, we open up with the story proper. Now we have a cabin, and there's sheets that have been hung out to dry. There's a woman yelling at her husband from a window before she sits down to knit in front of the TV. A news broadcast comes on, and it's telling us of the incident of the night before. And I think from memory, the news reporter is Steve Miner.
Oh, cool.
I want to say it was actually him. I know he does a cameo at some point. I think that's him. So she hears a noise and presumes that it's her husband, but we know it's Jason because we can see his figure stumbling around outside. She goes to get the washing in, and we see a figure and goes back inside. The husband, meanwhile, is in the store at the front, and we see Jason in the window behind him. So there's a lot of that kind of shadows, seeing him in the foreground or background while the subject or the person isn't like noticing or looking at it as it unfolds.
They went very Michael Myers with this.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So then we get the husband, and he grabs this pet rabbit and starts to help himself to some food in the store. His wife catches him. So we get this kind of whole nagging wife-husband kind of almost comedy routine thing going on here. And he goes back out to the barn to put the rabbit away, and then he discovers that all his rabbits have been killed. And then we get our first 3D moment where a snake comes lurching out of him from the hutch, and he runs back into the house. Did you have any thoughts on that particular moment, or?
It was just I was waiting for something to jump out. Obviously, they were very keen on experimenting with the 3D stuff, and so big shocks were coming early. So that wasn't a surprise.
No, it was the same. It was interesting. Like I think in the commentary notes as well at the end, they kind of did say how they were really experimenting a lot because it was. 3D hadn't really been done since like the 50s and 60s, and this was the first chance to revisit it again.
There was a massive resurgence around this time.
Yeah.
And I remember going to see a couple of movies at the cinema. I think it was like Transformers movie or something that was in 3D.
Yes.
So a lot of cartoons were coming out in 3D, and they were quite effective. And I did see the trailer for this at the time, but I was very young, so and it did look like there was actually some cool 3D moments in it, and any chance they got to poke something at the screen,
that's it.
Did it. So
that's right.
So good on them.
Okay, so later we have the guy. He goes to the outhouse, and he starts to get the feeling that he's being watched, and he checks all the closets. He looks outside, and then is promptly dispatched in the chest with a machete. So. Our first kill.
Nice. Some nice gruesome moments in this.
Yeah.
First of many.
Yeah, and that's something mine is, and in his credit, and I'm probably hinting at my thoughts of the movie, but in this particular movie, to Steve Miner's credit, he's always been very good at the gore factor and bringing the gore factor to it. And doing it well.
That's what was missing out of the two. Episode 2 was that it didn't have.
No, that's right.
Those gore moments, so it was a nice welcome to return to the franchise.
Yeah, definitely. So, agree. Then we come back to the wife who kind of goes out to investigate. She gets frightened by a mouse and then walks with her back to the door. And at this point, we get Jason's hand crashing through the window, and he stabs her to death with a knitting needle through the back, and then impaling through her eye, and then poking out with 3D moment.
Beautiful. Yeah. Not the last eye that comes poking out of the screen either.
No, that's right. So look, I quite like this I thought as an effect, as far as a kill is concerned. Not necessarily the effect. I just like the use of the knitting needle impaling her, and thought that was kind of a cool moment within the movie.
Yeah.
We see our would-be victims as so we're introduced to the young cast members, and they tick all the right boxes. They're drug-fueled and sexually ramped up, rearing to go. So all the right boxes.
Tommy Chong, absolute Tommy Chong lookalike.
That's it.
I swear, I was like, is that Tommy Chong? I don't remember him being in this. And then he spoke, I was like, no, that's not Tommy Chong.
No, that's right.
I was very disappointed. I was like, man...
For a moment, you thought you'd discovered a gem.
Yeah. A hidden Cheech and Chong class.
Yeah. So they meet a strange tramp on the road, which is almost a bit like Crazy Ralph, in a sense, I felt. Because obviously the character's been killed off in the second part, but it was almost like they felt they needed that oddball old guy kind of to move things along, and They kind of
he does. There does seem to be that sort of formula where they have a crazy guy at the beginning.
Yeah. Talking about doom and gloom and
But maybe he's the he's Tiresias, the blind seer of thieves, maybe, who is the crazy one that predicts everything going wrong in all the ancient Greek plays. Maybe that's essentially what he is. I've always sort of thought maybe that's probably what
I like the fact that you have hope that it had that deep meaning attached to it. I'd love it if Steve Miner comes out and goes, "Oh yeah, that's what we were planning all along." Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a commonality in a lot of the storytelling there.
No, that's right. Anyway, it's all good. So we get like another weird kind of 3D moment as well, where he shoves that eyeball at the camera as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which weirdly didn't look much like an eyeball to me, but I don't know whether that was just because the effects didn't look too good. But anyway, so the guys eventually turn up at the camp. We meet another character called Rick, who seems to have lustful eyes on Chris. As the campers settle in, Chris gets a little unnervy. She messes around for a little while with the Rick character in the barn until we see. We hear a scream and she goes to investigate. And then the goofy kid, Shelley, who was actually quite... he was one of those love him or hate him characters throughout the entire franchise.
I didn't love him.
No.
I thought he was very annoying.
Yeah. So he's I think I agree as well. I didn't really relate to him. He's just goofing around a lot.
Yeah.
And
there was nothing redeemable about it.
No, not at all.
Absolutely fucking irritating.
Yeah. And then he does that because he's a fat kid.
Yeah.
So and he plays the whole pity card a lot and then tries to make up for it by these pranks that he has or makes. And so in this instance he falls out the closet with a machete embedded in his head. Yeah. But he's just fooling folks. It's just a trick he's playing on everyone, and everyone just gets pissed at him.
Yeah.
Because of it.
Funny fat stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Shelley and Vera then they kind of go out, don't they, at one point, and they get roughed up by some biker types at the store.
Yeah. With the whitest sounding black girl I've ever heard in it.
It's so true.
It sounded any whiter if you tried.
It's like, what?
I'm a biker gang. I'm in a biker gang and I vote Conservative.
I'll mess you up good and proper, what?
She was straight out of Rada. She really was.
Yeah, that's right.
What are you going to do in the 80s? You're black and you're American. You're going to have to play a gang member.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's right. Oh, I could say something there, but I'll probably get myself into trouble. Because I don't think that way. I was going to joke, but yeah, that's not.
No.
So they get roughed up by these biker types, and Shelley backs over their bikes in the car, with the car, and the guy gets pissed off, smashes their car window, and Shelley just goes back and drives back over the car and him, and knocks him over, doesn't he? I think. Anyway,
knocks his bike over and runs over his wheel.
That's it. Yeah. Then we have another 3D moment with the yo-yo, with one of the young kids, the yo-yo.
Right. Blasting his yo-yo in her face.
Yeah, that's it.
As you do when you're young and dumb. And...
Yeah, look what I can do. Oh, shit, I've just hit you.
I'm walking the dog.
Yeah. They return back to the camp, and they're being watched, and then we have Andy and Debbie's characters, and they go off down to the lake for a swim. Meanwhile, the bikie gang turn up to wreak havoc. The female bikie, her name's Fox, heads into the barn. She climbs into the attic, and the other guys steal petrol from the car to presumably set the barn on fire. I don't know what they were planning on doing. There's a whole thing
it looked like they were. They were like, spread the petrol out. And hurry up and be quiet.
That's it. It's a really kind of lame sequence, this. And then, anyway, Fox is swinging on the pulley, that you get out at the barns, and then she suddenly disappears, There's another biker guy called Loco who goes in to see where she's gone. He goes into the attic.
Loco.
Huh? His name's Loco.
Loco.
Yeah, I was looking up the credits. His name's Loco. Going loco, buddy.
I'm Loco. He wasn't that Loco. I've seen Loco.
Anyway, so he goes into the barn to look for Fox. And he ends up going into the attic and he finds her impaled to the wall. At which point, then Jason comes out and spears him with a garden fork. The last of the bikies who's left goes into the barn and discovers a dead Loco. He then challenges Jason, but is easily dispatched, knocked to the ground, and then clobbered over the head with Jason's weapon of choice. But
I don't know what he had. What did he have?
Well, I thought it was the machete at first, but it couldn't have been because spoilers. This particular bikie comes back at the end, so I don't know what he was hitting him with, but wasn't enough to kill him.
It looked like one of those little sort of truncheons, like that.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. Anyway, whatever it was, it didn't do the job proper,
Yeah.
Chris and Rick continue to talk about their issues. We have Andy and Debbie going off to their room while Shelley tries to crack onto Vera, but she heads off outside, leaving him alone. We see a figure of Jason coming into view and then Shelley stoking the fire before turning around to look at the camera. We then get this brief flashback into Chris's character. So Chris is like our central heroine. She's younger and she's getting attacked by a guy in the woods. She has no memory of how it ended as she blacks out. She wakes up in her own bed but never really knowing what happened. So there's hints there that this was Jason that attacked her years ago too. Rick and Chris have to walk back to the camp as their car won't start. And then the two stoners that are left, the male-female stoner characters in it, have crashed out. Yeah.
Because they've eaten their stash as well.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. I missed that too. They thought the police were after them and they started just wolfing down there. Stuff. Yeah, that was quite funny. So they're kind of pretty stoned out of their minds at this point. And then Chuck, the guy, goes to the outhouse where it begins to shake. He goes to find out who's behind it, and he sees Jason go into the barn before he then bumps into Chili, who's the girl character. They go into the barn to play a trick on who they believe to be Shelley. Jason watches them walk off as they presume there's no one there. Once again, Shelley plays a trick, this time on Vera. We see the infamous hockey mask for the first time.
Ah, yeah.
As he wears it for the scare. The infamous hockey mask that Jason has now become synonymous and known to. It's the first time we ever see it. It's in the third movie. And it's worn by...
weird, isn't it? Isn't it weird that it's like the thing that he's most known for is in the third movie.
That's right.
And, so for the first two, you don't see shit. Like, you don't even see Jason in the first movie because he's not in it.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the second one, I think you see some mangy-looking fella.
Yeah, that's right. And he has a bag over his head.
Yeah, that's right.
So, like... And in the commentary, the set designer and the costume designer were talking about this, and they were saying how they didn't really like the bag look. They kind of wanted something else. And in Shelley's
the bag look is from the town that dreaded sundown.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what he was wearing.
That's right.
So So carry on.
No, that's fine. So all I was going to say is that so they were going through the stuff that in Shelley's gear that he happened to have, and they just kind of went, that'd be kind of cool if he put that on.
Oh, shit.
And they just basically they added some markings on it as well, just to kind of make it a bit more unique looking. Darken the eyes up a lot, obviously, round it to make it a bit more menacing. And that was kind of it. When little did they know that they were creating history just by just messing around with props and seeing what they had to hand. But there you go.
The power of gut instinct, eh?
Yeah, that's right. So we had the Shelley character. He hears a noise coming from the barn. He goes to investigate it. He thinks that it's Chuck and Chili just goofing around in there, and there's a momentary scare where a sandbag falls down in the barn. Then we go back to Vera, and she's looking at Shelley's wallet, and there's a moment of fondness from her here at this point towards Shelley. She's kind of like seeing that there is a bit of a human side to him, and but she drops the wallet into the water and has to go to retrieve it. We see Jason arrive wearing the hockey mask. So the fact that he's wearing it is alluding to the fact that Shelley's been killed, not that we've seen Shelley dead yet. Vera thinking that it's Shelley again. And then we get this moment where Jason points a harpoon at her and shoots her through the eye with it. And for me, this was the best kill so far.
Ah, shit, yeah.
Not only did it work with the 3D, like with it suddenly kind of coming at you out of nowhere, was awesome. But the effect afterwards with it in her eye was really, really good too.
Oh, it was gold.
Yeah, and so this was at this point I sat up and I was starting to take notice because up to this point I was a bit like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I wasn't really connecting with it, and I was just like, oh, that was actually a really good scare, really good bloody moment, and a good use of the visual effects that they had at the time.
Oh, damn straight. Yeah.
So then, anyway, we then go to this after shacking up with Debbie, and Debbie and Andy shacking up. Debbie goes to have a shower. Andy then goes to get some beer. He says the words you should never say in a horror film: "I'll be right back."
I'll be right back.
And for some reason, he does so to get the beers whilst walking on his hands. Which I still don't understand why, other than to prove that he's a bit of a dick.
Full of hormones and will do anything to get into her knickers.
That's it. Although he's already done that, so does he really need to do anything afterwards? Anyway, at which point Jason turns up and bludgeons him to death.
There you go, show off. That's what you get for walking on your hands.
That was Jason's verdict of his circus skills. Like that shit.
Yeah, never taken the Cirque du Soleil.
No, that's it. Debbie
Voorhees family and Cirque du Soleil do not mix.
No, not at all. Debbie then goes out to find out where Andy's gone. She gives up and then sits down to read a copy of Fangoria, which I noticed, on the hammock. When blood drops down onto her, she looks up and sees a disemboweled Andy on the roof beams.
Did you see in the Fangoria what she opened it to?
No. What was
an article about Tom Savini.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Nice nod.
I was like, hello, this is cool.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I like that.
That was great.
So actually, something I should mention too. Just before, while she was doing the shower scene, there was a bit of nudie scene in there. So I don't know if we've had that in this franchise yet. Oh no, there wasn't there? When the girl did the skinny dip in the lake.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. I thought there was for a moment. Anyway, it's still worth noting there was a nudie bit. For what, no other reason than to just point that out. So anyway, she sat down. She's reading the Fangoria comic in a hammock. Blood drops down her head. She sees the disemboweled Andy and the roof beams. We then get a repeat move from Friday the 13th, the original, where she's stabbed from underneath the bed by Jason.
Nice.
With the spear going through her.
That was quality too.
That was a good nod as well.
Yeah.
And I think that is why it's really interesting. Obviously, the reason why she's reading the Fangoria comic with the Tom Savini article in it, because of the kill that's coming up, was with a big
memorable kill. Yeah,
exactly.
That's right.
Makes a lot of sense.
Because they were. I mean, they obviously were referencing Tom Savini in his early work. So it was obviously a disciple of his, or maybe a student of his. I know he teaches.
That's a good point.
Young talent and stuff.
I'm just trying to look it up. I don't have it here, but I'll add it in the film notes at the bottom of the podcast when this goes up on the website. just to kind of look that up and make a nod to him, because I don't think he did a lot around stuff, so that's why I didn't tee it up properly in these notes. Anyway, so we have another person down and out. We then the lights go out in the cabins, and Chuck goes to figure out what's causing it. The music comes into play at this point. We hear a bit more of that kind of score coming in. He goes down into the basement, and then Chili, the girl, opens the door, and Shelley walks in with his throat slit and collapses to the floor. So there's our confirmed death of Shelley.
There you go.
Chili presumes he's pranking again, but he's clearly not. Jason then springs Chuck, who's down in the basement, and is thrown into the generator and electrocuting him to death. So another one down.
Nice one.
Chili finally figures out that Shelley is actually dead, and then goes into this panic mode, running around the cabin, discovering everyone is dead, in possibly what I've written here, the worst acting moments in the film, before being impaled by a hot fire poker.
Definitely.
It was.
Oh, sorry. I've just googled the makeup artist.
Yes.
Dan Winston worked on it uncredited.
Oh, why? Okay.
Yeah. And the lead makeup artist was Alan A. Apone. I don't know what he's done.
No.
But I thought that was interesting that Stan Winston. Oh, here we go. He's done makeup on Django Unchained, Iron Man 3, Captain America.
Okay.
Far out. He's done a lot of Suicide
Stuff more
Squad
recently. Yeah. That's interesting.
Like head makeup artist on Suicide Squad. Avengers.
So he's definitely walking in the Marvel universe, isn't he? He's obviously a key player in the makeup world in there. So so that's interesting. And yes, you're right. I did read about the Stan Winston thing, and I criminal of me not to have neglected that, actually, because I did read about that. He came on and he started stuff, but he had to bow out because of scheduling conflicts.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't. He was only there for the very, very beginning of it.
Still way cool.
Yeah, definitely, massive. I don't know about. I haven't done anything yet, but I've signed up to the. I often get the notices of the Stan Winston School of Arts, which has all these kind of like special effects stuff that you can learn, and I keep meaning to do one of these days, but I never get around to it. But I am keen to learn that stuff because I think it's really freaking cool. Anyway, so we have so I don't know if you caught what I just said at the end. So
world's worst actor.
Yeah, like it was awful. That scene where she's just suddenly running around the cabin.
Oh man!
And it's just like she just didn't know what she was doing.
I thought it was because she was trying to play it stoned. But
is that right? Okay.
But it was just lame. It wasn't. It's bad blocking.
I think that's
they didn't really know where to put her, and they were like, "Okay, well, you're gonna die at some stage, so just run up here and run down there." And there wasn't really a great deal of room for her to move.
No,
so she kind of made it up by the looks of it, and tried to tread in air, basically.
I agree with you. That's how it came across. It just looked really, really ropey. And unblocked, I think. Not good blocking involved within it. Anyway, she's killed off anyway, so it doesn't matter. We then go back to Rick and Chris, who are our sole survivors at this point, and they return to the cabin to find it in disarray. Rick says he's going to go outside to see what's going on. When Chris goes to see where he is, she can't see him, but Jason is holding Rick against his will, and then crushes his head in a really quite funny eye-popping moment, 3D moment.
Very Game of Thrones there.
Yes, that's true.
It was far more gruesome on Game of Thrones, obviously.
Oh, yeah. But we
did get a bit of eye poppage.
We have the eyeball popping out with the 3D thing. But I don't know about you, but it looked really fake to me.
Yeah.
It really looked like it was an eyeball fake eyeball on a stick going forwards. I was like, I don't know. I'm not that convinced.
Shoot it across a piece of screen across towards the camera.
That's right. So we have another guy killed off, and this is then Chris discovers that one of the bathrooms is flooded, and bloody clothes are in the bath. She runs outside, where all of a sudden the wind picks up massively. She discovers the loco biker hanging dead from a tree. So then she goes back into the cabin and starts to barricade herself in. And we get another repeat scare, very similar to the first movie where the female character's body gets thrown through the window.
Yeah, that's right.
And we get the same kind of thing here where Rick's body gets tossed through the window too. Jason then appears and he climbs through the window after her. Chris runs upstairs and then tips a bookshelf over onto him. And then she runs into a closet and locks herself in, where she discovers Debbie's dead body. And then this is kind of interesting. She pulls the knife out of Debbie's lifeless body and starts swinging wildly at Jason and eventually stabbing him in the leg. There's something quite nice about that, because not only is it a bit sick and twisted, but also it shows tenacity on her part to just grab a weapon, and it's in her friend's body, but I kind of like that moment. For a moment I was like, that's actually quite a cool thing.
She made out that she was a fighter before when she was telling the story. About what happened to her 2 years earlier.
That's right. We know she's a survivor.
She fought tooth and nail there to get away, and so obviously it fought to get away back then as well.
Yes.
Or something had happened to make her survive. But so she's got the fighting spirit.
She's got a fighting spirit in her.
She's a fighter.
So then we have interestingly, so she stabbed Jason in the leg with the knife, but he pulls it out and then throws it back at her, narrowly missing her, which is another awesome moment, I thought. Yeah.
Brilliant 3D moment as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Chris then manages to escape out of the window, but barely, as Jason grabs her coat before she can free herself.
He managed to run into the one room that had the smallest window possible.
Do you know something?
Like, what are you doing? You know this house. Don't run into the one with the smallest window.
Do you know what I thought of in this moment, though? I instantly thought of, and obviously this movie I'm going to reference came after this, a lot later, but I'm wondering if it was a nod to this, but Scream, when Neve Campbell's character ends up in the attic and then has to climb out of the small attic window, and then she also falls out of that window as the person tries to grab her, and she falls to the ground. So I don't know whether that was deliberate or not, but because Craven and Scream in particular is a massive nod to slasher films of the past, I wonder if that was an actual knowing nod to the Friday the 13th.
But did they do that in Halloween as well? I'm sure they have done that in Halloween, where the person's ran up to the top of the house and climbed up the top window. I've seen it done a couple of times.
It's in Halloween 4, where they have the rooftop escape with the lead character and the girl, the Jamie character. They end up climbing up over the roof, and the lead character falls off the roof, and you think she's dead, but she's not.
Yeah.
Anyway, good point. Yeah. It has happened a lot, but I just wonder if, just in that, the reason I mentioned that one is because of the fact that it was up into the small attic space and out of a small window and then falling whilst, in that instance, Ghostface is about to grab her and she falls out. So it's a very similar move.
Yeah.
In this instance too.
You never know.
Anyway, so she. So what happens there? So she manages to free herself. She then waits for Jason to come out the front door to spring him again and then knock him over, which is weird because then she goes to get into the car to drive off. So you think, why didn't you just do that to begin with? Anyway, she goes in the car, drives off, but runs out of gas on a wooden bridge. The car starts to fall through the bridge just as Jason tries to grab her through the window. Chris somehow then still manages to escape, and then she gets herself to the barn where she seeks shelter. Jason comes in after her, looking for her, and she's hidden herself up in the rafters, out of his line of sight. And then we get there's this moment where he comes in the barn and he's looking for her, and I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a really great GIF out there at the moment where it's splashed with him on one side and John Travolta on the other.
Yeah.
Doing the same kind of movement. Oh, it's just funny.
Brilliant.
I'll see if I can grab it and put it on the website as well. Jason, Jason comes in looking for her. She's up in the rafters. She then drops down, knocking into the ground, and then climbs back into the attic part as she's locked in. She can't get out the barn. Somehow she's locked inside of it. She hides behind a bale and then clobbers Jason over the head with a spade. She then uses the pulley to tie it around Jason's neck and hang him. And then, and pushes him off. He swings down and he's kind of hanging there. You think he's dead.
You hear a snap.
You hear the snap, that's right. Now, presumably...
So that was an effect that he did slapping his thigh.
Seriously? Yeah. Whoop. I slapped my thigh. Now, presuming that he's dead, she climbs down from the attic and manages to free herself from the barn. She opens the door to find that Jason is still alive.
Now, there's a surprise.
Yeah, of course. His arm is... Is that right? His arm is chopped off and Jason wheels into him. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
No, he chops...
Oh, sorry, that's right.
He chops the biker's arm
I'm not making sense of my notes. Yeah, that's right. He chops the guy... he chops the biker's arm off and he's wielding into him. While he's distracted from that, Chris grabs an axe and thrusts it into Jason's head. She makes her way down to the lake, where, like the original, she paddles her way out into the middle of it. We cut to morning. Again, we're getting very similar kind of signature notes from the first film. So it's morning. She's lying motionless in the boat before waking up screaming. The boat hits a log and she gingerly pushes away. A duck flies down, scaring her. She then sees
ducks.
Those bloody ducks. She then sees Jason from the barn window and he comes crashing out after her.
Making some weird, funny faces at her. That was just weird. He's like, baby Ruth! Ruth, baby!
She tries to free herself from another log when Jason seems to have disappeared. She looks around to then have Mrs. Voorhees come out of the lake and pull her underneath. So again, a nod to the original, but reversing it, so it's actually Mrs. Voorhees coming out. The next scene... the cops are about and mentioned that she's the only mentioned to Chris that she's the only one alive, and she's clearly lost the plot because she's talking about a lady in the lake. She's driven off in the police car as we see Jason's body in the barn still, hanging. We cut to the lying on the floor. Sorry, in the barn. We cut to the stillness of the lake before fading to black. Close credits.
Nice.
So that kind of rounds out the narrative of the piece. What was your... do you remember watching it before?
I don't actually.
Yeah.
I know I saw it ages ago, but I think I said to last time, I've at least seen it the once.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones I have seen many times.
Sure. So I don't know if I don't think I had actually seen this one before, funny enough.
Yeah.
Which is weird because when we talk about how it's iconic because it's the first time we see the hockey mask come into it, that people like us who are fans of horror haven't kind of observed or watched this one more frequently. But yeah, but what was your reaction after watching it this time round?
I liked it. I thought it was a nice little part of the franchise, and really had it. It was a nice little almost another origin film, really, because you got the origin of the mask, which is kind of a nice thing. Some awesome deaths, and there's the odd unexplained thing, like how she got away from Jason in the first place. It was never fully explained. And it was all right. Yeah, I didn't mind it. It was beautifully shot. Yeah. Like, it actually looked beautiful. I would have loved to have seen it in 3D just to get that 3D effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, they did well with it. They milked it.
Yeah, they did wherever they could. I mean, they basically had this really expensive piece of camera equipment. Yeah. And they were just shooting everything they could with it. So they were trying every trick under the sun to try and make the most of the fact that they had this equipment there, which was groundbreaking at the time. Now, here's the thing: my gut reaction after watching it is that I didn't like it. I thought by far it was the weakest plot wise that we'd seen so far. But funnily enough, after the 24-hour litmus test kind of moment, there are pockets of it that really resonate and still resonate with me still, which has made me think that it's probably deserves better than my gut reaction. It's
got no plot to it. There's no plot to it. It's just they've gone to the camp, and that's the thing with most of the Friday the 13th actually. Is they go to the camp and they get killed. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. Even the first one. They go to the camp, they get killed.
Well, that's it. That's right. But, like, here's the thing, right? Where this is... Because I think what annoyed me a bit is that it was repeating stuff for me from the first movie. And I know a lot of that was nods and salutes to it. But here's the thing that's clever about it is that if you do look at this movie as the rebirth of Jason and the Friday the 13th franchise, it kind of makes sense. So you could technically watch this one as your first ever Friday the 13th.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the rest kind of follows suit quite
We could pretty much skip, like, you could do one and then go to three and skip two completely.
You could.
Like, it's almost like the Nightmare on Elm Street, really. It's like... You had the first one and the third one, where both had the same director.
Yes.
And the both franchises, the original director didn't direct the second one, and they balls it up completely. Because the second Friday the 13th was awful. Looking back on it, I was just like, man, this is a terrible film. And they've really just injected everything that we liked about the first one. It's come back into the third one.
Yes.
And so it's a rebirthing of the Jason mythology again.
I think so. And then when you look at it like that, it actually starts to become a better film because of it. And that's not to excuse the poor plot line, because that still grates with me. But there are enough signature moments in this to make it worthwhile watching and re-watching again. So what we normally do, and we'll do now, is that we'll quickly talk about some of the players of the piece that are involved, some of the actors. Just some due nods to the people that took part. So the person playing Jason in this movie was a guy called Richard Brooker. Now, he was a former trapeze artist and stuntman. He would later do a spot of directing before becoming a sports producer later in his career. But the key thing that stood out here for me was the trapeze artist thing, because there are a lot of stuff in here that require a lot of physical work. And you can see that coming into effect, particularly like with the rope swinging down, with the neck, because he's kind of, he has to pull himself up on that too. And
yeah, he does.
Yeah. So there's certain things in there that require a lot of upper body strength in this instance. And while he's no Kane Hodder in the sense that who we now recognise as Jason today, a lot more beefed up, bulky kind of Jason, because he's a slight guy in this one. He's not as bulked up.
Yeah, he's a bit smaller.
Yeah, but he does make up for it with, like I said, that upper body strength that you see within this movie. So just want to make a hats off nod to him. Our lead heroine is the character's name is Chris Higgins. She's played by Dana Kimmel. She would make a cameo appearance in Happy Days before then famously playing Chuck Norris's daughter in Lone Wolf McQuade.
Oh, right.
She would play a lot of various TV roles beyond that, but she never really she is known mainly for this movie.
Yeah. That's a shame. She was actually quite good.
Yeah, she wasn't. She was actually, to be honest, and a lot more. And I find so far that's been the case with the heroines of Friday the 13th. They've always been. They've actually been strong actors playing the heroine, which has served it well. And this is no different. She probably is the only decent actor in this movie. The rest are quite hammy, to say the least.
Yeah.
We have Tracy Savage, who plays the friend Debbie in this too. She probably was a bit more on the scene actually, like she, as in like when she was younger, she would star in numerous TV roles, including Little House on the Prairie. After this movie, she actually retired though from acting to pursue journalism, and she apparently covered the O.J. Simpson trials, where she was called to the witness stand to reveal her sources.
Right,
which is kind of interesting. So she's made quite a career in journalistic circles. Which is kind of interesting. What did you think of her performance in this? Did you?
Yeah, she was okay. Yeah, she was sort of add-on friend. That's that's the shower girl, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the shower girl.
Yeah. Yeah, she was very good.
Best way to remember her.
She held her own. She was a strong female role.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the other female character in this, we had Catherine Parks, who played Vera Sanchez. She's the one that would get the harpoon through the eye. She would actually appear on screen as Tina in Weekend at Bernie's, the female love interest in that movie. She would also star in the odd TV episode Along the Way with the likes of Street Hawk, and and Quantum Leap as well, amongst her credits. So she's been like a bit of a bit player in quite a few things. And the reason why I note her, not just because of those credits, I actually quite liked her character in this. She's the one character that had that. There was that tender moment, where she's looking at Shelley's wallet and the photo, and and that actually did strike me as a believable moment, which with all due respect to the actors involved, there was not a lot of believable moments in this movie. But that was one of them.
So she dropped it into the water, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But that was one of the ones that I kind of went, that actually triggered quite nicely. And it's good in the way that then leads up to, still for me, was the best death scene in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. So, yeah, Julie noted mentioning her. Just rounding out the couple of the guys in this. So we had Larry Zerner, who played Shelley. He's now a lawyer, and he starred in one.
Good.
Yeah, he's actually quite successful in that. He starred in, and he did star in another movie called Hadley's Rebellion. But yeah, I think he's now, as I said, a lawyer, and he sometimes represents Hollywood actors as well, in particular, and kind of does that scene. And I think from what I read about him, I think he's been quite successful in the industry.
Oh, okay.
His character is known for, as I said, for being the original owner of the iconic hockey mask.
Nice.
So his character will always go down in legend because of that.
Yeah.
Kevin O'Brien plays Loco, one of the bikies in this. Now, the only reason I mention him is because his most notable movie outside of this was playing the role of Chaz in 1989's Warlock. I don't know if you remember the Warlock. It's when they tried to do fantasy many years ago, not very successfully. Huh?
Is that Julian Sands?
Yes, I think that is the Julian Sands one.
That was awesome. Yeah.
So he's in that. Again, a character called Chaz, probably very minor. I don't really remember him, but I thought,
no. I remember the movie.
The movie is what made it stand out. Now, the last person I will just mention on the acting circuit is the guy that played Harold. So he's the husband character at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
Now, he's played by a guy called Steve Suskind. He was a bit part actor in numerous TV roles and would crop up in the likes of Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, as a character called Pitchman. But he would often cast his voice in animations towards the end of his career, and that's what he kind of moved more into. Look him up because he does crop up in quite a lot of animation movies that are. I mean, he was never like the main character or anything, but he does a lot of like the support acting roles in a lot of those movies. So as we mentioned, Steve Miner's the director in this movie. I'm not going to go into details of his background because we kind of covered that in the last podcast. Other than to note that he is one of the like 80s and early 90s most prominent horror film directors, and he's done a lot of things. But what I'd like to move into now is in an area that I call the director's note. So it's just some bits and pieces I've read up on around the movie and the direction that kind of might be pushing Miner's kind of thinking behind the creativity side of things. He originally spoke to Amy Steele, who played Ginny, the character from the second movie, to have her star as a trauma patient. Hold on, before I finish this, I want you to tell me if you recognise the plot line. Okay, so he wants her to star as a trauma patient in a hospital where Jason tracks her down and then goes on a rampage basically through the hospital.
For Christ's sake. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Halloween 2.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. So I was like, hearing that, I went, really? Okay.
It hasn't been done before.
Yeah, all right, okay. She turned it down. She turned down the role.
Oh, good.
So then they had to rethink the plot, and that's what they came up with. As I said, the 3D element was introduced in this too. There was millions spent on equipping the cameras, equipping the cinemas for 3D to accommodate this movie. And the film actually ended up knocking E.T. off the #1 spot in the box office.
Jesus.
Which is huge. And it paved a new wave of 3D movies because of the success of this movie.
Oh, right. So
which is going back to what you were saying about how at the time you were aware of a lot of 3D movies happening. It's because of this movie. And
right.
Not a lot of them achieved the success of this movie. It's still heralded as one of the best 3D movies as far as box office receipts are concerned. Not necessarily as far as film structure is concerned. Miner was actually he's a huge fan of Dial M for Murder, the Hitchcock movie, which was also one of those movies that was done in 3D back in the day. So there's kind of little nods to that throughout the movie that you can kind of pick up on throughout it. Miner describes Jason in this movie as the living human equivalent to Jaws.
I could see that. I was thinking that the whole time I was watching it. Actually, it was they're dropping the hints here and there, and then they'll gear him in for the kill. Yeah, and you don't actually see Jason in full form, i.e., the mask. No, until about 2/3 of the way through it. So,
That's right.
So yeah, you definitely got the Jaws moment.
So look, I think there's something to be kind of said about that. I think there's definitely a thing about. And just rewatching Jaws recently, I forget how good that movie is. And I know people praise it, but like it's one of I hadn't watched it in ages either, and when I rewatched it, I was like, it's really fucking good.
Oh look, it made Spielberg's career basically.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like he would never have been able to do that. I mean, I know he's incredibly talented, but he would never have been able to be put into the positions that he was put in afterwards. No, that's right. If it hadn't been for Jaws.
That's right. He was 20. He was 26 at the time of making Jaws.
Far out. That is just crazy. Isn't
he was 22 when he made Jewel.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy. Anyway, that's an aside. We're here to talk about Friday the 13th. The last thing I just want to mention again is the disco theme. that awful disco theme.
Because that pops in at the end as well.
Yeah, that's right.
For fuck's sake.
It's by
bad enough we had to hear it at the beginning.
It was by they made up the band. It was called Michael Zager and Hot Ice.
Jesus.
And but yeah, as I said, apparently it was a hit. But there was a cover band that still does this song, and you're like, oh my god, it's terrible.
My major work at uni was a horror-based comedy set over. It was like a trilogy set over 3 nights. Yeah, and it was all about the mythology of the hero in horror. And we had a house band and everything because we had like 3 stages, pyrotechnics, and a house band. And a massive screen in the middle of that we'd cut to for comic frames and stuff. And so the band was called Des Craven and the Deadites.
I love it.
So it's very similar to the band name here.
I love it. That's awesome. I'm so going to put that somewhere. All right. So look, just before we wrap up, what was your final verdict on the film? And maybe relate it to the previous 2 that we've spoken about as well.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I did think it was a return to it's like the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 of that franchise.
Yeah, it's a good
this franchise. I mean, and it's like they got the original director back in. They ballsed up the second one. They got the original directors back in to give you a bit more of the same and just give you a bit more of a reinvention of the genre, because there was actually something there.
Yeah.
That obviously that it was a bigger story with Jason, and I don't think they were actually going down the right path in the second one. So it was nice because I'd only seen it once. So looking back, I'm watching it retrospectively, knowing that all these other sequels happen afterwards.
Yeah.
That you can kind of see it as like almost an origin film with, you know, the mask and the Jason in the true form of Jason.
Yes.
So that was quite nice. And some of the deaths were absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So quality for me.
Sorry, say that again.
So it was quality for me.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's what I'm saying. Like there was as in my instinct was that I panned it. I was like, this is awful. I really didn't like it when I came to the end of it. But there's those death scenes in particular within it. There's some, as I said, the iconic use of the hockey mask as well, and it's almost like there was things that triggered after the fact, after I'd watched it, that I kind of came away with, and just typing up my notes and stuff afterwards, and I'm just like, actually, it deserves better credit than I gave it.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, so for me, like for any horror film fans out there, I would recommend them watching this if they've never watched it, and if they're aware of Jason, of course, some of his later ones. This one, I would definitely say, hey, go back and check this one out. And watch it in 3D. Because I think
if you can find it in 3D,
if you can find it in 3D, do so. Because I think that will be the little bit that will tip it over the edge as far as making it a worthy movie.
Yeah,
in my book. I think that's about it, buddy. That probably concludes our discussion. So, that was our third horror film surgery of the Friday the 13th franchise. Do stick around for our next discussion on Friday the 13th Part 4. And actually, we're kind of thinking about rolling that one into a 3-parter, 4, 5, and 6, as there's a link between those 3 movies. So stay tuned for that. And as usual, if you've got any comments and stuff for any listeners out there, just kind of hit us up on our Facebook or on our or on the website there, or on Twitter. In fact, if you want to approach us that way with any comments, let us know your thoughts, and let's talk around Friday the 13th franchise. Until next time, we are Miles Davies.
Bye.
And Paul Farrell, your humble host. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.